and welcome to the Scots Whay Best Books of 2019 podcast. And I am joined, as I am every year, by Vikki Reilly from Publishing Scotland. Hello, Vikki.
Hello.
And we are going to talk about our year in books, if you're happy to do that.
I'm happy to do that.
I want to start talking about a book that actually came out, I'm going to cheat already, at the end of last year. It came at the very end of last year, 2018, but I didn't read it or review it until 2019, so I'm going to claim it for this year. And that is Beer Jacket's Silver Chords, Beer Jacket otherwise known as Peter Kelly, and I think you're aware of it as well.
Oh yeah, I've got a copy.
We should say it is an interesting publication. Well, it is more than a book. It comes with its own soundtrack.
Yeah.
And that's interesting for itself. So it's a collection of short stories, but there's also a CD as well of the songs which match the stories. Mm-hmm. And for people who don't know, Beer Jacket is best known previously as a musician. That's how I first got to know him, a fantastic singer-songwriter. But this, this is kind of better than it's any right to be, I think, in terms of the short stories, because they are really, really good.
And for us, it's hard to say he's a debut writer, but that is exactly what he is as well. But the stories are really self-assured, really moving, and it is like he's been doing it for a long, long time. I mean,
he is a kind of master of words. He cares about you. So you just have to listen to his songs, and as you say, very moving and very personal, and almost surreal in places. There's twists that you don't expect, and that's in the stories too.
Yeah, it's just reading the stories, he comes across as a much more seasoned writer.
Yeah, definitely.
Than what a first collection should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was interesting that it came out on Scottish Fiction, which is Neil Wilson's indie record label, because I think, I'm right in saying we maybe spoke about Stephen Watt's mixtape last year, which came out on last night from Glasgow. Yeah. So there was this move. It didn't become a huge move by any means, but it was interesting to see that other people were starting to think about publishing books.
Yeah, and just because, we've not really had another one since Beer Jacket doesn't mean that it's not going to happen again. I hope it does happen again, because I think the mix of stories and music is an obvious one, really.
It is, but this was clearly because I spoke to him in the podcast, which you can still listen to in January as well, and still a very personal project for him, and it got really well received. Yeah. He's had events at a lot of book festivals.
I saw him at the Edinburgh Book Festival. It was a great show. Really great show.
And so I think if we call that a start to the year, it was a really good and interesting start to the year.
And it's a perfect gift because it's a beautiful thing as well.
We should say that. It absolutely is. It's lovely hardback. Yeah. The quality of the paper, everything you want from a really good book.
Yeah. So if you've got somebody in your life that's a little bit difficult for, but they like music, but maybe something a little bit different, then because it's got lovely illustrations, it's really well laid out, it's lovely.
I think I might say the illustrations are from Julia and the Duggans, who often sings with Peter as well. So he's kept it kind of it's all something that is personal, and he's got friends involved with it to go along with him, and it's great because you can go and see him perform, sing a few songs, he'll read from the book as well, and it just works really well. So do check that out, because sometimes books that come out at the beginning of the year are forgotten when you do these roundups. But one which definitely wasn't forgotten, and who could ever forget him, David Keenan's For the Good Times, which won the Gordon Byrne Prize, is that right?
Yeah. And that's, I must admit, out of all the literary prizes, that's the one that I always think throws up the most interesting shortlist.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I always pay attention to that one a bit more, just because the books are always, they're not the ones that you see covered in newspapers over and over and over again. And because Gordon Byrne's writing, his own writing was so interesting, I think that goes with the character of
So what is the criteria behind the prize? Do you know?
I think it's you've got to do something interesting with with fiction.
So something a bit literary and exciting, experimental, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and something that does something new with both fiction and non-fiction as well.
Right.
Because Gordon Byrne himself sort of blended those boundaries as well.
Well, David certainly blends boundaries with you. So,
shatters them.
Shatters them, yeah. For the Good Times is based on the early life of his father and uncles in Belfast. Young guys obsessed with Perry Como, of all people, and who, not just with the music, but the way he dresses and the way he is, the attitude. And just as the 70s are starting to move in and you're getting people, as we did in Scotland, in Northern Ireland, who are starting to have longer hair and hippie ideals and all of that stuff, and they can't quite get their heads around this, even though they are all kind of united by the movement at the time, which was the Republican movement. And it would take a whole hour to explain this book to you. I will say we did a podcast with him again at the beginning of the year where David explains it for himself, and it's a great listen, I have to say.
Yeah, it's one of my favourite of your podcasts.
Yeah, he's great company, whether in person or just in your ears. Definitely check it out. And that was on Faber. And Faber also released, we're getting Music Head on, published a book by Alan Trotter. I think it's his debut.
Yeah.
It was called Muscle.
Yeah.
And was that one that you were aware of?
Yeah, funnily enough, this year I've been reading books in couples a lot. And so I read For the Good Times with Milkman.
Yes.
And I thought they were a really good match.
Yes, and Milkman won the
Booker last year. Yeah, in 2018.
Set in Ireland as well.
Yeah, they both actually tackle the same things about the performance of living through the Troubles.
Yeah.
But both done in completely different ways because, For the Good Times is told very much from a male perspective and Milkman's told from a female perspective, but they are really great complementary titles. But Muscle, I read later on in the year, and I read it with Kevin Barry's Nightboat from Tangiers.
Right.
Which they're very similar. They're both like sort of two gangsters waiting about.
Yeah. So waiting for Godot with gangsters, really, isn't
both
it?
Both of them are like that. Actually, there's probably a bit more action in Muscle. There was quite a lot of scenes in that where you just had to sort of read it through one eye, kind of thing.
It's such an interesting book. It is noir, but there's also kind of sci-fi aspect to it as well, because there's this weird time travelling thing that goes on in it.
Well, is that all in his head though?
Well, whether it is or not, it's on the page. And you've got this object which he imbues with kind of great meaning and all that. And one of the characters, of course, is never named. It's just blank and underlined through the whole thing. It reminded me of, do you know the filmmaker Ryan Johnson?
I don't know.
No, he did a film called Brick.
I think I've heard of that film. Yeah. Is that the guy from Third Rock from the Sun's in it?
It is, yeah. Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Yeah, which is again a fantastic noir film but set in high school. Yeah. That's a great film, like the kids are all trying to be
You're
really
always adding to my list of films to see as well.
Well, this is not the film one, but the comparison is worth making because he also did a film called Looper, which was, again, Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Bruce Willis.
Oh, I've got vague memories of what that's about as well.
Bruce Willis has to go back in time to kill himself. So there's this real time loop and he's a gangster. And if anyone is going to make the film version of Muscle, it's got to be Ryan Johnson, I think. But for a first novel, it's fascinating. It's so inventive. Like David's book, it just is doing something new and experimental, and you just don't expect it, and it pulls it off.
With all the experimental issues with form and what both books are still very much about fate and how you can't escape your own fate, and that search in violent men for some kind of tenderness and not being able to grasp it at the end. And for books that are quite violent and visceral, there's moments of real proper heartache as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a while. I haven't read it since at the start of the year. But I have a memory of the ending of Muscle being really, really moving.
Yeah.
You know,
there's bits interspersed all through it where they come up against somebody that could be maybe some kind of salvation, but it isn't in the end. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And that's similar with Nightboat from Tangiers as well.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to mention this, but I will now because we're talking about something that's experimental and all about fate and not being able to avoid it. Did you read David Cameron's Prendergast's Fall?
No.
Should say here, not that David Cameron. It's the poet David Cameron.
Yeah, nobody cares about that David Cameron's book.
It was a publisher called Imprint, is that right?
They're a new publisher, yeah.
And this was their first move into fiction. I think they'd done sports books and things like that before. Stephen Cameron, David's brother, is involved in it. But this was a book, Prendergast's Fall, and it's the story of Prendergast, who's just about to take the leap from the edge, or is he, as you have put doubt about
it's all in his mind.
But he's just about to jump, basically, and it's about the fall and what goes through his mind as he is falling, and he looks back from that point all the way to the moment of his birth.
Right.
And then you take the book and flip it round, because the cover is the same but different. One's black and one's sepia, if you like. Maybe not sepia is the wrong word. But you can flip it round literally and start, and you start at the beginning of the birth and you go all the way up to that ledge. And it's the same story, but it's not told the same way.
Right, okay.
But if you're not careful reading it, you might think it is told the same way, but it's not. There's different things, different memories come in. But it's that thing about fate as well.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. It takes a wee while to get your head round, particularly the second time, because you're making assumptions that you know the story and it's being told by the same narrator.
It's funny, like, while I've been reading books in doubles, and now they were talking, and it's funny how, like, this year, and I don't know if it's this year in particular, that you do get books that are so well matched, and it seemed like there obviously is something in the psyche of writers at the moment to sort of tackle those things in experimental ways as well.
It's an interesting thought, and I've thought about this before. And is it just that because obviously, as you know better than me, there's lots of books getting published at any point. So do you just pick out the ones and go, oh, there's a link there and there's a link there? Or is it the case that there is something in the mood, you know? And I think often there is.
Know. I don't know. Maybe because I'm paying more attention to generally in books now more than specifically to like a single publisher.
Yeah.
I'm noticing it more.
Yeah. Well, should say that you do the Books from Scotland website.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so you are getting, I mean, not just fiction, everything.
Yeah.
And often taking the best of that and putting it up on the website. Mm-hmm. So you're kind of perfectly placed to see what those trends and what those ideas are and how they shift.
And I didn't notice that until later on in the year, because I read Milkman and For the Good Times right at the beginning of the year. I thought I was just going to read that as a doubler, but then I just started noticing, oh, those two books will go well together. So that's how my my reading has gone.
Yeah, because often you might think, oh well, this book which has had great success or at least great attention might spark lots of people to do something similar. But
when they come out at the same time.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
it's not a case of saying, oh, isn't the bridge a bit like Lanark? It's something that comes out at the same time.
Yeah.
And almost like people have never met each other.
I know.
And when you start to talk, as we're doing now, people go, oh no, I didn't know about that. It happens right across the board. It's very interesting.
Do you think there is such a thing as a cosmic consciousness?
That's a question for David the next time I see him. So next I would like to talk about David F. Ross's new book. So in the past he's done his Disco Days trilogy, which ended with The Man Who Loved Islands, and this was it's not a standalone, it's a new series I believe, but it was Welcome to the Heady Heights.
Right, I didn't know it was a new series. I thought it was standalone.
Well, maybe it is. Maybe I've got that wrong. Maybe he's got good. I think there are characters in it.
Right.
That will come back in other books. Yeah, having spoken to David, I'm fairly
I've seen on Twitter he's just handed in his manuscript for his next one.
Yeah, I'm fairly sure he's maybe got this world that he's kind of creating of 70s smart arses, for want of a better term, because the thing about David is that the language in his books, it just fizzes off the page. You know, he's got this great ear for how people talk, and with in a terrible way we might call it banter, but it's not. It's or patter or whatever you want to call it. But it's the it's the way people talk to each other.
Yeah, I'm sad that the word banter has become cheapened because loads of folk are being publicly rubbish at it.
It's because the word bants with a Z has been
ruining it.
Struck off. But so it's kind of a crime book, I suppose. It's dipping his toe into crime, but it's looking at our beloved entertainers from the 70s that have turned out to be not so beloved as we once thought they were. It certainly goes into that world. It's very funny. It's outrageous in places. I think it's the best thing he's done so far. This kind of idea of comedy crime, I really like the idea of if you can make it dark and still make it funny, that's not an easy thing to do.
And not just funny, but like human as well, like in a way that because in my year of doublers, I've paired David Ross's book with a book from Sandstone Press, which was released earlier this year, called Finer Things by David Wharton.
Right.
And both of them remind me of books. I hesitate to call them old-fashioned but they feel like books that haven't been written for a long time but used to be written about, where it takes like really ordinary people that have like an inner life and dreams and aspirations and puts them in a bit of an extraordinary situation where, you know, the outcome can go either way because, you know, dodgy dealings are going on. And then they, you know, even like things like old 60s books like Suburbia, Billy Liar, and all those kinds of books about dreams and ordinary people. But they've got a rattling good plot and characters that you can actually think you could go down to the pub with as well. So I've put those two together in my head this year.
And there's one that's similar to that, which I'll mention in a minute. But what was that one, David Wharton?
Finer Things.
I don't know that.
It's about it's set in 60s London.
Right.
And it's just as London's about to start swinging.
Yeah.
And it's about two girls sort of come into each other's lives. One is a working class shoplifter and one is a new sort of art student girl, you know, like sort of first generation going into like further education and sort of dreaming to get out of suburbia and all that kind of thing. And they meet and get involved in sort of like dodgy underworld business. And but again, it's that sort of thing of ordinary people wanting to break out of their situation, but they kind of get themselves in trouble trying to do it.
So is it the kind of London of Michael Caine and the craze and all that? You expect them to be photographed in black and white?
But it's totally, it doesn't, like when you say that, it kind of feels like there's some kind of stereotyping going on there. It's not like a governor and all that.
Yeah.
It's really real.
Yeah.
But again, it's got humour and it's got great characterisation and good dialogue as well.
Well, Welcome to the Heady Heights was set, as I say, in the 70s in Glasgow. As was Alan Park's February's Son, which is the second his series. And if it goes the way it's going, we'll have 12 of them at least.
Well, the first one uses March, but in the surname of somebody.
No, the first one uses January.
No, sorry, the third one, the one that's coming out next year.
Yeah, that's right. Bobby March or something like that.
Because I just saw that on Twitter recently because folk are sort of starting to talk about what's coming out next year.
Tremendous book, real cracking, pacey crime fiction is what Alan writes. And what he really does is capture the minutiae of the time, but he doesn't overdo it. You know, sometimes you get these books set in a different decade and it's just a list of, you know, space hoppers, choppers, blah, blah, blah.
Formica
kind of
and all this kind of,
Yeah, but he doesn't. It's little subtle things, and even if you don't know them, you think, no, this feels true, absolutely feels true. And it's a fantastic book to read.
I do have the January one on my shelves, but I need to get around to it. Maybe I'll do that at Christmas.
Oh, do you know what? They're the perfect cold outside, you put it in and, you know, scare yourself senseless because there are people like that in the world. I have to say they are spectacularly violent in areas. In fact, do you know what? That's not fair. It's that kind of psycho shower scene thing. You think they are because of, you see the aftermath or whatever, but you don't actually get the violence. But what you do is when they turn up at the crime scene, and Christopher Brookmar does this brilliantly as well, the description of what's happened to the body is enough for you to go, oh, what's been going on here? And he does that really, really well. It's been an interesting year with crime fiction.
Yeah.
And we always have to talk about crime fiction.
Yeah.
Bloody Scotland, for instance, seems to be going from strength to strength as a festival.
And I actually called the McIlvanney Prize this year. Both prizes. The Treachery of Spies, the one that won the McIlvanney, though in the end Amanda Scott shared the prize with everybody else on the shortlist. But that was one of the first books that I read in 2019.
Right.
I was trying to remember what year
were in.
And as soon as I read it, I was just like, this is crime, but it's crime and thriller, and it's a step above. It's a really good, really involving book where you just get I've listened to it on audiobook, and it always annoyed me because I would listen to it walking to work, and it really annoyed me when I got to my work because I had to turn it off because it was.
You go round the block just to make sure you get to the end of that chapter.
Yeah, so it's set in it's set in the present day and in World War II. So it's about a murder, and it's not a spoiler to say that the old woman that is murdered, it turns out that she was a resistance fighter and spy in World War II, and the twists and turns and the betrayals, and oh my god, it just is. So it's really
crime and historical fiction together.
Yeah.
And who was the other?
I read them all apart from one. So Ambrose Parry, not The Art of Dying, that's the second one, The Way of All Flesh, which was brilliant as well. Denise Mina's Conviction, which I thought was really good fun. And Breakers, Doug Johnson, but I've not read that one.
I have read that one, and I have to say, it's among Doug's best ever. I love Doug Johnson's work. I think I've reviewed all of his books apart from the very first one, which was before Scott
He's a machine.
Started. He is fantastic.
He's got 2 books coming out in next year as well.
He just doesn't stop. And I did want to talk about Breakers, so that's lucky because it's set in Edinburgh, and where his fiction I think really comes alive is when he's dealing with families. He's very, no one writes at the pace. I don't mean the pace as in how quickly he writes, but the books just go. You're there, you're in it. He kind of, often with a book like Hit and Run, for instance, you're in the car and you're driving through the streets and there's going to be a thing, and by the end you're finished and you're going, my God, he's stunning in that way. But his best books I think are when there's a real family dynamic to it, and in this one you've got a young man who is having to look after his sick mother and a young sister, and is being used by his older brother. We talked about Beats before we started recording. There's a similar dynamic there between the brothers, if you've seen the film Beats. But he, to housebreak and commit crime, and then he has the salvation that you're talking about in Muscle, the possibility of salvation. Very moving, very fast paced, but it's among the best Doug Johnson novels, and that's rating it very highly because I do think he's one of the best writers that we have. And I also wanted to mention it almost seems like partner in crime. I don't mean that in a bad way, but whenever I see Doug Johnson at an event, Helen Fitzgerald is nearly always
funny,
beside him, because they work. It's like a double act. They work so well together. I mean, and clearly respect each other's writing, but clearly have great fun doing these events. And that's going back years. I saw them. Oh man, it must be about 7 years ago they were doing that. And her latest one was Worst Case Scenario. Yeah. Which is interesting because there's scenes at the Edinburgh Book Festival.
Oh really?
Oh yes, yeah. Oh, she's the central character ends up beside Margaret Atwood.
Again, it's another one that's on my shelf that
I think that's right. Or it is right.
What, the character goes to see Margaret Atwood?
No, in the yacht. She ends up beside her because things have gone very, very wrong. So I don't want to give away too much of the plot, but there's a character who has been in jail, and she's kind of helped make sure that he'd stayed in jail to this point. The narrator.
She's the parole officer.
That's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. And kind of social services side of things. That's it. And doesn't think he should be out. And she's coming to the end of her time in the job, and it's fair to say, obsessed with this guy who has written a book which has given him a certain celebrity, and he's going to be at the book festival doing his book, and there's lots of twists and turns in this one as well. But the scenes in the Edinburgh Book Festival are worth getting the book for those alone, for anyone who's been there, because it's hilarious and spot on and clearly written by someone who has been there many times and has had her kind of eye and ear open for what's going on. And the other one I wanted to mention, there's another two, but Douglas Skelton's Thunder Bay.
Yeah, I've got that on audio. It's my next lined up audiobook that I've not, because at the moment I'm listening. Well, another good Scottish book. I'm listening to Nina Allen's The Dollmaker at the moment, which is really, really good.
Okay. And what genre is that, if you can say?
She's more known as a science fiction writer, but this one's I suppose there's an element of sci-fi. It's unsettling. It's not horror, but it's very straight. It's a sort of strange mishmash of outsiders and interspersed with the story of this guy that makes dolls and loves dolls, and he makes friends with this woman who's in a mental hospital. And then they're going to come together at some point. I've not got to that bit yet.
Okay.
But interspersed through it is stories written from a writer / doll maker.
Oh, right.
And they're all sort of these really weirdly creepy books, stories that all seem to sort of have things in common, but also seem to hark back to the life that the two main characters are living as well. So yeah, I'm really intrigued as to where it's going to go.
It sounds a bit like Tales of the Unexpected.
It feels kind of like that. It really does. And I think it's a shame that it's a book that I think should have got more fuss made of it this year. Hopefully with a paperback edition it might do.
And so after that you're going to have a listen to
Thunder Bay.
Thunder Bay. So Thunder Bay, I think every year we've done this, we've talked about Douglas, because again, very prolific and fantastic and really varied. The Janissary run, was that last year, I think?
Yeah.
The one that's set in New York,
and,
should have been picked up to made into some kind of film.
Absolutely,
so good. But this is him back in Scotland. Thunder Bay's off the west coast of Scotland, I think, and it's about a character going back home and finding that there's the secrets and lies that you would expect there, and there's trafficking going on, and the division between the folk who work the land and the folk who own the land, and you get the feeling Douglas was getting a lot of kind of stuff off his chest, but he's now got to the stage where he's just writing these incredible thrillers and doesn't miss a beat with them, I think.
I know, I'm looking forward to getting onto it after.
I wouldn't give anything away then, since you're going to be listening.
But I do know that he's the next one in that series is coming out quite early next year.
Good.
It's The Blood Is Still or something like that. It might be.
That's something to look forward to.
I think it's something like that. That's the title.
But most of these books that I'm mentioning, a lot of them are on my kind of top 10, which you'll see over at the website when I post it up. In fact, I'll probably post it before you hear this. But number 5 in that is another crime book, and it's Claire McCleary's Runaway. Another podcast guest this year. Fascinating woman, Claire is. And these, if you don't know, this is the third in the series of books with Maggie Laird and Big Wilma Harkness.
Big Wilma.
So two middle-aged women who are private investigators in Aberdeen. And the reason I like the books so much, and the characters in particular, are often with crime fiction in general, and particularly a lot of the Scottish crime fiction, it's about a loner at the heart of it, Rebus or Parlabane or whoever.
Maverick loner.
Often male maverick loner. And here you've got two women who they have to deal with it every day of the family. and that still has to come first. And you've got Maggie's daughter who just can't quite believe what she's still doing and why she's doing it. Sometimes they can't believe they're still doing it and why they're doing it. And it takes them to dangerous places in Aberdeen. And, you know, in Aberdeen, that's saying something. There's a lot of dangerous places. They're just terrific books. The characters are just so warm and you're just on their side. And even when they're falling out, it is fantastically thrilling crime fiction, but there's another dimension to it which I just really, really enjoy.
Well, that's the thing with crime. Well, it does my head in that folk get snobby about it because there's such a variety and way to do it.
Well, that's what I hope, just the last 5-10 minutes that we've been talking about, that you've seen that in this year alone, and we've only scratched the surface. Yeah. We could have talked about Stephen Watt's Fairy Rock. We might do that later on. Crime fiction in poetry and in verse. But there's something for everyone there, you know?
And the notion that like it all follows a formula is not true. No. That's just lazy thinking, that is.
I refuse to believe it would sell if that was the case.
Yeah.
I don't think. It's all right maybe even for one writer to have a formula, you know, like when I used to read, you know, Jack Higgins or whatever, the 78 Precincts. There was clearly a formula, but that was the writer. That was up to them. But there's not like, this is a crime book and here's how it goes. But I think for a while they were maybe sold a little bit like that in terms of booksellers, and that's maybe put me off.
I think there's a truth in that. Like I think a lot of readers do like books that are genre busters. But it's hard when you're trying to find the right Nielsen bit code. When you're wanting to make the book visible to to online and all that kind of thing, that you do have to kind of sort of try and box it in a little bit, which is a shame. But it's just the necessary part of commerce, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh, got it, commerce. Well, we've talked a little, at least one award winner earlier on, and here's one that's just won the Saltire fiction book. Is that the one that it won?
Yeah.
And that's Ewan Morrison's Nina X.
Yeah.
And this is an interesting book.
Well, see, again, it's one that I've not read, but I'm waiting until it comes out on paperback.
Well, I can tell you that it was interesting for me because I read it and then I started reviewing it. Mm-hmm. And then I realised, because when you're doing reviews, you know, you often do a bit of research behind what's going on, and I didn't suddenly realise that this was based on a true story, and very, very closely based on a true story.
I'd not heard of the true story either.
No, so I had to go back and kind of restart the review with this in my head and think, oh, well, hang on a minute. And of course, if you're not familiar with Ewan's work, he often likes to, again, isn't just prepared to do the norm. He'll use a lot of his personal experience. If you think back to Swingers or something like that, or Swung it was, wasn't it? Swung.
Yeah.
You know, intensely personal books, and Close Your Eyes, I think, it was another one about his own childhood. So he uses real life and real stories and then kind of fictionalises them. In a similar way to, I think, Andrew Hagen does as well. Uh-huh. You know, there's a kind of almost journalistic aspect to it.
Well, that goes, I mean, those would be ideal candidates for the Gordon Byrne Prize as well. Because they do, Ewan Morrison's books often do sort of blur the boundaries between fiction and non-fiction. Yeah.
I think he's almost like a, you know, back in the 60s and 70s with Hunter Thompson and Tom Wolfe, you had they called the Gonzo journalists, where they had to live it. You know, they went to the Kentucky Derby and hammered it. And I think with Ewan, there's not that he has to live anything with Nina X at all, but you know, he has done the research clearly, and this story has inspired him. Is that the right word? But it's a story that is a brutal, and when you learn that it's based so closely on a real event, it's really I mean, it's shocking anyway, but it gives it an added level of shock. And I know
I'll have to be in a robust state of mind when I'm when I'm reading it. But again, that was another book that I'm glad got recognition at the Saltires, because it kind of flew under the radar a little bit.
Well, both that and David's book are I think as good as Scottish fiction has been recently, and it's so good to see them being rewarded for that.
The truth is, Scotland this year has done really well when it's come to prize winners, books from Scotland. So I suppose the Saltires, obviously the book's going to come from Scotland, but we've had the Gordon Byrne Prize for David Keenan, and we had of Ducks Newburyport, which won the Goldsmith Prize and was shortlisted for the Booker as well.
Now I know that's a favourite of yours.
That's my book of the year.
Okay.
If I had to pick a book of the year, it would be Ducks Newburyport. It's a huge thing for a start, and a lot of people in the publicity about it were always just banging on about its formal experimentation and sort of lazily saying, oh, it's all one sentence, and oh, it's Ulysses, and again, that's part of the whole sort of commerce of like the reviewers' world and the.
Here's another book that you will never read but looks good on your bookshelves.
But and I hope, I don't think it has so far, but I hope it hasn't put people off, because it's actually really, really easy to read. It is an inventive book because it's told completely from a single view. Well, it's not actually. The main character is this housewife in Ohio, and it's just the portrait of her restless, anxious mind, just going over everything in her past and her present, and a lot of most of the sentences start off with like the fact that, and she'll discuss everything from her own relationship with her husband and her kids to the pies that she's baking, because that's what she does for money, and then she'll rant about Donald Trump, she'll rant about gun violence in America, she'll talk about the environmental catastrophe that's heading our way, she'll talk about films like she has an ongoing conversation in her head about the film It's Complicated with Meryl Streep and Alec Baldwin, and it's just like you're so in the head of this woman, and at the same time it's totally got a plot. A lot of people think it's just like ramble, but there is a shape and a structure to it, and you get that sense of momentum. You get like this sense of foreboding when she's talking about violence and all that kind of thing. You're like, something's going to happen, and things do happen so that you understand her anxieties about what living in America's like nowadays, with how violence is, and the Me Too movement and all that kind of thing. And there's also this section too that's told from the point of view of a mountain tiger that's lost her cubs and is trying to find her cubs, and they both coalesce, the two narratives, in a really brilliant way. And it's just a fantastic read, and I urge everybody to go and read it. I'm not going to deny that it's 1,000 pages. By around about 600 pages, I was like, this is, I'm not going to say a slog, but you were working hard at it.
It's quite a rarity these days, unless it's a big fantasy book, that you've got a novel that size, isn't it?
But then I think it's a book best read in massive chunks, so like if you've got like 2 hours like to give to it or whatever, rather than just like when I was around about the 600 word mark, it was I was just snatching like 20 minutes before going to sleep and all that kind of thing, and that's probably not doing it the service it deserves. You can't really you shouldn't really maybe pick it up on the train and all that kind of stuff. Remember when I was in hospital for a while, someone gave me Bret Easton Ellis's American Psycho. Oh, that's terrible to give to somebody that's recovering. It's the perfect book to sit. I mean, again, all in his head. But yes, it was in some ways. I loved it. But I was on drugs at the time. But you just read through again, long book, read through the whole thing brilliantly, and so you get the full sense of what's going on inside that person's head, because you are with them from the beginning to the end, in a similar way that Kelman does with a lot of his novels as well. That's the thing, like, for a lot of people you can appreciate formal invention and all that kind of thing, but you grow to love a book if it's got heart as well, and that's what you can say about James Kelman, and that's definitely what you can say about the Lucy Ellman book as well. It's very emotional and a really satisfying, proper. So for those who don't know it, give the title again. Ducks Newburyport, winner of the Goldsmith Prize.
So, a book I'd like to talk about, which I did an event with the author for it. It's Karen Campbell's The Sound of the Hours. And in a throwaway line in my review, because, you know, sometimes you do these things, I said it's Captain Corelli's mandolin meets Catch-22. And I kind of wish I hadn't done that now, to be perfectly honest. I mean, it is in a way, because particularly Catch-22, because it looks at the madness of war. But I think it was sold, or at least maybe was put out there hoping that it would catch the Captain Corelli's readership, you know, as a wartime romance. You know, and despite all the odds, this couple kind of comes together, which is not what it's about at all. It is historical fiction. It's set in Braga in Italy, which apparently is Italy's most Scottish town.
Oh, they have a fish and chips festival.
Since I have read this book, and I've been recommending it to a lot of people, saying you should read this, and the amount of people that not only just know Braga, but go to Braga, and it's quite a pilgrimage for a lot of Scots.
Yeah, because...
I'm sure there's a piping festival there as well.
Yeah, we did. I worked on a book years ago by a Scots Italian called Joe Pieri, and I think that's where his family was from, and that's how I know about the Fish and Chip Festival.
Yeah, and there's a Scottish character in The Sound of the Hours as well, but the two central characters are Vita Guidi, who is a local girl, and the war is obviously kind of she's trying to survive around about the time of Mussolini's fall. So, you know, there are lots of split loyalties within families and within villages and all that kind of thing. And then you've got Frank Chappell, who's the Buffalo Soldier. And again, the only thing I really knew about Buffalo Soldier was the Bob Marley song. You know, I didn't really know. And that's not true. I've just remembered I read a book called Buffalo Soldier, which is a cracking book. But so he is an African American who joins the American Army, thinking he's going to, because he's an educated man, thinking he's going to be officer material, and it was like, no chance, son, you are there, and you're going to be sent over with other African American Buffalo Soldiers, as they're called, and he ends up in Italy, and there is a romance there, but that is not the central run of it. It's all about the detail and the background and the research that Karen's clearly done into what war was like at that point, and how everyday people had to try and survive when either they were thrown in as soldiers or were living in the middle of it.
And because I've not read Sound of the Hours. Again, it's another book that I'm waiting for paperback because I'm a cheapskate. I've read Mary Contini's Dear Alfonso, which talks about her family member that lived in Italy just before coming over to Edinburgh to start Valvulon and Corolla, and the bits about Italy in the Second World War and how so difficult it was for the women folk to keep their houses together, to even just like feed their children. It was quite heartrending, but I'm really looking forward to reading that.
It's a beautiful book. It's a really beautiful written book as well. I mean, I think Karen's one of the finest around, and that fear brings a tear to your eye, I tell you.
I like books like that.
Absolutely. A book that might bring a tear to your eye, but for completely different reasons, is Gemma Neville's Constitution Street,
right.
Which I think is only the first non-fiction that we've mentioned tonight. Is that right?
Tonight, yes.
We went to see her doing a reading from it.
Was it the launch? It
Could well have been the launch, yeah. It came out on 404 Inc. As we know, regulars will know, one of our favourite publishers. And it is a book which looks at the local to kind of try and make sense of the global, if that isn't too, a cheap way of saying it. Gemma herself lives on Constitution Street in Edinburgh, which is just a bit further down from where we are now. Yeah,
it's shut now because of the new trams coming in. I won't bore you about that, but that's an Edinburgh bugbear.
Can imagine. And if Glasgow learns nothing, don't bother with trams. And again, we was lucky enough to talk to Gemma on a podcast about the book, but really she takes a walk down Constitution Street, getting to know her neighbours and the people that work there and the people that pass through there, and the different buildings are used for and the different spaces are used for, and so you've got the structure of a kind of almost a travelogue, if you like, but then you've also got the Declaration of Human Rights and how the different human rights should be applied, and each chapter kind of looks at a different one. And what strikes really closely to home is how we are failing people in nearly every single one.
Well,
now I know no
They.
not us sitting here tonight, but it's it's a really it is a really moving book. It should make you angry. It certainly made me angry. I tend to look at things through rose-tinted specs at times and think, well, isn't it great about meeting your neighbours? But as she said, but you might not get on with your neighbours, but it's still important to have some kind of understanding of the people that you share a space with. And I think that's absolutely right. It's a terrific book. It's one of the most interesting books published in Scotland for some time, I think.
Yeah, it's a great way to do social history as well, to bring it back to the personal, so that it doesn't just feel like a textbook. It is the story of the world that we're living in. It
is a story, and it would worked for anyone. I mean, initially I thought, well, is this about living in cities? But no, it's not. It's knowing the people in your village or the next village or in wherever. The principle remains the same, and. At the time, most people said, this is a really timely book because, and including myself in that, I might say, because of the political situation at the moment and how, there's this idea that societies are being divided and people are being pushed against each other and all that kind of stuff. But actually, that's universal and it never goes away. And you realise, this book it could be read at any time and it would make sense and it would strike a chord, I think. And it's fantastically well written.
I'm really interested to see what she does next as well.
Yeah, exactly. Who knows? But I didn't read a lot of non-fiction this year.
I suppose if the big Scottish book, non-fiction book that caused quite a lot of waves this year was probably very similar, I suppose, as Kerry Hudson's Lowborn.
Oh her
which sold really well, and Kerry Hudson was travelling up and down the country promoting it. And again, it's a much more personal story to her because she revisits place because she lived. She grew up with quite a troubled background, and she moved all over the country, just sort of chasing council homes after council home, and so she went back to these places to see if these neighbourhoods have changed and how the folk living there are living now. And it's one of those books that are it's jaw dropping, and it's one of the, and something that those without empathy or those that are just, I don't know if they're ignoring or just not seeing what's happening out in the world. They just needed to read it. And it's not new as well, because again in my doublers I matched Kerry Hudson's book with Catherine Tchaikovsky's book, which
a proper person to be detained. Well, time to talk about that then, because it's now this is another interesting book. I've done this a couple of times and it maybe says more about me than anything else, whereas I put expectations on what a book was going to be, and I'd read some of Catherine's previous stuff, the Jean Armour books in particular that she wrote.
But that was fiction though.
Yeah, that's right. This has kind of been pushed as a fiction, but it's not. It's like, who do you think you are? Isn't it? Really?
Who do you think? It is like that, yeah. Because I actually think that Who Do You Think You Are is one of the most quietly rebellious TV shows going at the moment. Because even though it's the BBC and, they get their knocks now. Yeah. But when they do go back and do those social histories and they talk about, how the British were in India and how the British were in Ireland and what working class lives were like in the Victorian age and no.
Jerry Hall's forebears had been involved in the slave and
was that right? I didn't see that episode.
She was genuinely shocked.
Right.
Well,
I didn't see that
Texas,
one.
But you're right. People can be really because they don't lie. Clearly.
Yeah, but Catherine's book is exactly like that. It started off she wanted to investigate her own family story.
There was an event, isn't there? A terrible event, as they said about Harry
most
Potter.
families have these stories where they're like, oh, your great granddad or something happened, and they talk about it, but they don't talk about it. And that was kind of like Catherine, where was it her great uncle?
There's a murder, as there often is in these things, at the beginning, and that's right at the beginning, so it's not a spoiler in any way. But what unfolds, and what I think surprised me, because as you say, I'm used to kind of fictionalised historical books from Catherine. It was this look into her family background that was just so vivid in terms of not just people and place. So she took this. I mean, the research was incredible, really, because she had what do you call it when the court notes things down? I can't think what the term is for that, but court proceedings, I guess, is what it is about. The man who was accused of the murder and all this, and it's about class, and it's about gender, and it's about poverty.
And immigration.
Yeah, absolutely, of course, Irish and Polish, and this kind of, and the way that different people are treated, because if the history of how the Irish were treated in the UK and on the mainland in particular is absolutely shocking. There's quotations from Engels, as in Marx and Engels, where he's basically saying, the working man in England needs to rise up and do all these things.
Irish.
But the Irish are not really, they're kind of less. It's unbelievable that this man who, I read the Communist Manifesto. I was quite. I know it's lots of short. I mean, we've maybe heard the no blacks, no dogs, no Irish signs that used to be up in pubs in the kind of beginning of the 20th century and the late 19th century. But this goes behind that, and it has plenty of examples of immigrant Irish being treated as less than human. And there's a thing which really connected with me is the family stayed for a while in the Carlton in Glasgow, which was 5 minutes from where I used to live.
Right.
And these streets where I used to kind of walk past every day, which used to be packed with houses, and of course they've all been knocked down now because they would have been riddled with disease and whatever. And it's just so interesting to see that social history, but told with the mind of a writer of fiction. Because there's, it's not just, and here they did that, and here they did that.
It's not dry
it's not dry at all. It's a stunning book, actually. In fact, the more I think about it, the better I think it is. And it's just so different from what I thought it was going to be when it started out. Do you have any other non-fiction that you want to mention at all?
Well, actually, my favourite non-fiction book that I read this year isn't Scottish.
That's all right.
It was called At the Existentialist Cafe.
Yes, I've read that.
Sarah Bakewell.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I really liked her Montaigne book as well, and Paris, Paris in the 40s and 50s is kind of, I kind of do have a soft spot for that. But the bits that I found more fascinating were not the bits that I expected to find more fascinating. Cause I thought I'd be all about,
Gitan and Sartre and all that kind of stuff.
I thought I'd find those bits like the most exciting bits. But it was the bits where he was talking about, oh God, I've forgotten his name now. The two German philosophers.
Ages since I've read it.
Their names have totally escaped. Heidegger and
Hegel.
Was it Hegel?
Schopenhauer.
No, they were contemporaries. They were contemporaries for a while.
Right.
Oh, that's terrible that I forgot. Anyway, but it was about their schism and about how Heidegger, I think, went a bit Nazi.
Yes.
And just the parallels of reading how the public discourse was in the 30s. And what it's been like for the last few years. I really found it not terrifying, but just I was very taken by the parallels. Maybe it was him. Could have been him.
Yeah.
I think it was him. Yeah.
See, that philosophy degree hasn't gone to waste, Mum, if you're listening. 4 years of studying that. Anyway,
I just, when you're reading one of those books and you just want to like, I don't do this on social media at all, is when you want to like just put big quoted chunks on and be like, see. But I don't do that kind of thing on social media because I value my health.
So from the list that I have, the book I want to finish off with is one I haven't reviewed it yet because I've not long finished reading it, but it's MJ Nichols' Scotland Before the Bomb. And now I've said that out loud, I'm wondering, is that the name of it? So I'll double check that. But we've looked at his books before. I think we've talked about them
last year. Might have been.
Yeah. A really interesting writer to me. Again, experimental literary fiction, packed full of ideas. I mean, and this is no exception. So the way it works is Scotland has not just become independent, it's set in the future, set quite a distance in the future, although the different chapters are from different times, looking back. You know you're going to... Well, I knew I was going to enjoy this, where after Scotland wins its independence, after 2019, you should know, and Nicola Sturgeon steps down, and Alistair Gray becomes the First Minister.
Alistair Gray?
becomes the First Minister of Scotland. And this is in the introduction. I'm thinking, I am going to love this. And I'm a massive fan of his work anyway, so... and what happens is Scotland loves independence, so wants to go another bit forward, and all the individual places vote for independence on their own.
Oh, really?
So
so we become like little different, like America.
Also, but in different stories to each of them. So what it actually reads like a collection of slightly odd short stories, and some of them aren't stories, some of them are lists, the way he does it. There are lists of words, there are interviews, there are illustrations in some of them, there are question and answer forms that have been filled in, all sorts of weird things, but they're all very kind of individual. I don't want to give too much because I'm still going to review it, but it's a very good book.
But it's not out yet, though, is it?
I don't think it is. I think this will be a review copy I've got.
Right, okay.
I presume. So when it is, look out for it, because it's a superb book, and it is M.G. Nichols' Scotland Before the Bomb. And as I say, if that's wrong, we'll make sure that's right before we finish this. But is there any books? I'd like to talk about poetry if we have, because we haven't mentioned any at all.
All right, okay.
If that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, my favourite poetry book of the year came out on the aforementioned 404 Inc., and it was Let Me Tell You This by Nadine Ashia Jassat.
Yes.
It's just, I was lucky enough to see her read from the book at Glasgow Uni for one of the creative conversations that are often on there, and then read the book and had a talk to her on a podcast again. It's just beautiful, personal poems that make me realise I should really read a lot more poetry than I do. But it's a tremendous collection.
The healthy state of poetry has been a thing for me this year, because I went to the launch of that in Edinburgh, and not only was Nadine performing there, but also Hannah Lavery, and she is amazing as well. That launch was one of my favourite book events of the year, and Hannah Lavery is published by Stu Rhubarb, which specialises in publishing books from performance poets and those on the spoken word scene, and they also did Jenny Lindsay's book, The Script. And which again was a really, really great show and great book too. Like a lot with performance poetry, there's can sometimes be ones that perform best on the stage and ones that work on the page as well. And I think that's definitely the case with Jenny's poems. Jenny's she's kind of one of these people that I think, why is she not more famous? Why is she not as well known as like Liz Lochhead and all that kind of
completely agree.
She's been doing this for a wee while, and I've never seen her do a dud show or anything like that. I think she deserves...
She's fantastic. She deserves all our support.
Yeah.
And I'm really pleased you mentioned Stewed Rhubarb Press, because I think in terms of a publishing story, they are one of the best ones of the last few years, because they really champion poets. You've mentioned some of them there, but also Ross McCleary.
Yeah.
They put out Rachel McCrums.
Yeah.
And Harry Josephine Giles as well, and many more.
Yeah, I think I've featured every single Stewed Rhubarb book
that says
on
it all.
the Books from Scotland site.
They really should be. I mean, go to on their website and you can check out what they've got.
They're beautiful as well.
Yeah. Exactly, because often, even recently, poetry collections were thought of, you would have a plain cover and they'd be sold in a brown paper bag, and there wasn't much love and care and attention maybe that there should have been to them, but Stewed Rhubarb Press are there to do just that, and give them the love that they deserve.
Yeah, they've just announced today, I think, that they're doing a subscription deal with the books that they're releasing next year. So you should definitely, it won't be a waste of money chancing your arm on getting one of those subscriptions, which is similar to what Speculative Books do. They're another one that publish a lot of performance poets. Again, they do a subscription model where you get, you put your money down and you get every single book that they publish each month, and I think that's a brilliant way to do it.
Talking of performance nights, I went to quite a few Sonnet Youth events this year, which are run by Kevin P. Gilday and Kat Hepburn, both of whom, like Jenny Lindsay, had Edinburgh shows this year.
See, I've never been to a Sonnet Youth event, which is bad. And I'm ashamed of it.
I think they're mainly over in the West, in Glasgow. I think they do some over in
they do
Edinburgh,
it at the Gilded Balloon.
Oh, you'd love them, they're great.
Yeah, but I did see both their Edinburgh shows, and I thought they were brilliant. I saw Jenny's Edinburgh show. I saw, for the Fringe this year, I just concentrated on spoken word, because I thought, I'll not overwhelm myself with all the choices, I'll just pick something and stick to it. And both their shows were brilliant.
And if you can get along to a Sonnet Youth night, you really should, because they're great. There's music and there's comedy and there's basically anything that they can decide to create and put on, and they're really well created. And both Kevin and Kat are worth seeing for them alone, never mind the other people that go there. But I've seen some great nights there, and they do open mic nights as well. There's all sorts. They are very busy people.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, we were talking about Beer Jacket earlier on, and that's the thing with a lot of these new writers, is that they're all slash, so they're not just one thing. They're like poet slash performer slash, and I think that's a really exciting thing.
Well, there's a new album coming out very soon by Kevin P. Gilday and the Glasgow Cross.
All right, okay.
So he's musician, theatre. He really does kind of have lots of slashes to his name, and I think you're right. There are many other people that are. I mean, partly it's kind of what you have to do if you want to be an artistic person. And make your living, and they would be laughing at that, some of them. But as an artist, I think.
But it's exciting to.
It's really exciting
because it means it means that you don't have long to wait for at least something of interest to come out.
That's true. And talking about people who are always busy, I would like to mention. We did mention him earlier on in the chat, but Stephen Watt. Who, as I've said a few times, is Dumbarton FC's poet in residence. Apparently, I think in Scotland, it's only him that's the only football poet in residence. I think that's right. He did say there was another one, but I think they might have. In England, there's a couple more.
Right.
But that aside, Stephen, I did an event with him recently. And he is just such a great performer, and his poetry's so fantastic. He'll touch on any subject and bring it to life. We mentioned Mixtape, which was all about his experiences with music, whether listening, going to gigs, or meeting other people, all of that stuff. And also Fairy Rock, which was his crime noir written in verse, which again is so brutal in places. Because
from the first line, practically, you're just like, whoa.
It's his, because Stephen's such a kind of charismatic and lovely man.
Yeah.
And then when you can see audiences going, well, what did you just say? what did he just say? And it's, the first page of Fairy Rock. Well, I was going to say, have you in a vice-like grip, but that's just about, no, that's just about maybe the wrong way of putting it, but it will certainly grab you. Always, in more ways than one. So, we'll be going for a wee while now, so let's think about what you're maybe looking forward to in 2020, if you can.
Well, in 2020, I am definitely looking forward to, hopefully, Jenny Fagan's new novel.
Ah, yes.
Luckenbooth, I think it's going to be called. Or it was called that, I think.
I've just remembered something else that I'm looking forward to. Yeah, on your game.
So that's coming out soon. And again, very similar to sort of Constitution Street, I suppose. And it's, from what I know of it, it's set in a single Edinburgh tenement, and it's about the life stories of different people that have lived in the Stair. So I'm really interested for that. I'm looking forward to the second Miss Blaine mystery with the vampire menace. So I loved the first one so much. Too. So I'm looking forward to the second one. Kirsten Innes's Scabby Queen.
That's the one I just remembered.
Yeah,
I have to mention that now. I interviewed Kirsten for Fishnet quite a while ago now, and she was talking about Scabby Queen then. Yeah. And it's finally coming out, and it's, for me, the most eagerly awaited novel of recent times. Cannot wait for that to come out.
And it's definitely coming out next year, so I'm looking forward to that one. Also next year, so Polygon had the big Muriel Spark centenary in 2018. 2020, they're doing a big project on Edwin Morgan's centenary.
And there's going to be a big conference at Glasgow University as well, a Morgan conference. So there'll be lots of Morgans. We'll be talking about Edwin Morgan this time next year.
Well, I got a little preview today of what the Polygon's plans are, because I was speaking to Edward, the poetry editor at Polygon, and I was like, "Tell me all about your Edwin Morgan." So it's what they've done is, in conjunction with Carcanet, which are his publishers down south. What they've done is they've picked different poems from Edwin, and they're making small little books based on a theme. So there's love, there's animals, there's Scotland, there's space and aliens, and there's people and places, and each one of them are introduced by special authors. So we've got Jackie Kay doing love, Liz Lochhead doing Scotland, Ali Smith doing people and places, Michael Rosen doing animals, and Ken MacLeod doing space.
Fabulous.
And so each book takes his poems of that theme, and they're really gorgeous, really lovely little A format books, and they're also selling them in a box set as well, so you can buy them individually or you can buy them in a box set, and the box set is only £20, so get your orders in, because
bargain.
It's such a bargain. I am absolutely slapping my money down for that next year.
Well, I'm looking forward to, again, mainly to do with novels. One is Chris McQueer's novel.
Yes, he read a little bit of that at the Book Week Scotland event that I did with him, and I was just like, get that written and get that out, because I need to hear more of this. Yes, I'm really looking forward to that.
Well, he promises it is on the way. I can't wait to see what David Keenan does next, because apparently he's got something coming out fairly soon, and I think I reviewed just recently on the website was Good Listeners, which was Brian Hamill.
Right,
And with Alan Warner. So 3 stories by Alan Warner, 3 stories by Brian Hamill.
Yeah.
And Brian, it was published by The Common Breath, is that right?
Yeah.
And so this is a really interesting project that Brian is behind, and it really is to try and get new fiction published. I think it is mainly fiction published. So I would go to the website and see what he's offering and things like that. But a new publisher's always a reason for cheer. Yeah. And, Brian has been in publishing for a long time, and he's involved with The Word magazine.
Right, okay.
Yeah, and a lot of the James Kelman.net stuff.
Because he'll be... he's releasing a book this month, James Kelman with The Word, on Kurdistan.
Yeah.
And then I think next year there's going to be a novel and a short story collection and memoir.
Yeah, and I don't know how much Brian is involved with The Word anymore, but I think he's still involved with the Kelman project.
Right.
And Common Breath, and so here's someone who is just going for it and really should be supported in these endeavours.
There's new Scottish publishers coming up all the time. This year, we've Publishing Scotland has got a record number of members because just new micropresses keep popping up everywhere, and it's just been such a pleasure to see, we work with a lot of these new publishers and more established publishers as well. Sure. And it's been a great year for the publishers. I mean, Sandstone, who won Publisher of the Year at the Saltires, they have had a brilliant year. I mean, not least winning the Man International Booker with Celestial Bodies,
of course,
which is a brilliant book. It's really, really great. And they're just going from strength to strength. And Charcoal Press as well. They're a brilliant micro-publisher that they're based in Scotland, but they only publish translations of Latin American books.
Oh, yes.
And they won Best Small Publisher of the Year at the Nibbies. And
it's really good to hear, because for a couple of years you felt, well, obviously, some were just closing and that was it.
Yeah.
But also that maybe there was people are moving out and moving away, and that's really good to hear that there's folk.
No, there's a real energy in publishing at the moment, which is it's great. It's great, and it's also, there's just such a variety of the kind of publishing coming in Scotland, and this notion that that Scottish publishing is only of interest to people in Scotland.
Yeah.
It's just such a fallacy when you see that Sandstone are winning a Man International Booker Award from the very first Omani translation, and Charcoal Press are winning tons of awards for their Latin American books, and it's been great to watch them go from strength to strength. And
just coming out at the moment, we've got a new literary magazine as well.
Yes, Extra Teeth.
Extra Teeth,
There's a lot of, I count the new 404 magazine as a new magazine because they sort of they relaunched it.
But that's the thing, there's 404, Gutter seems to be had a real resurgence there. Obviously New Writing Scotland and The Word, as we mentioned, which is a magazine in its own right.
Yeah, I think I don't think everybody that are involved in all these projects are making a load of money out of it, but they're certainly they're just refreshing and regenerating our cultural scene, and I can't get enough of it.
And another new thing which goes on with that, which I'm looking forward to in the new year, is the Paisley Book Festival.
Yes.
Which has got a fantastic lineup. But the main thing I'm looking forward to, there's going to be a big birthday bash for John Byrne, and John Byrne's 80th birthday.
I should
in
really
Paisley.
check to see that the tickets haven't sold out yet.
Go for it. You don't want to miss out on that, I'll be sitting there like a stalker with matching moustache. With them, but so Kira Brown is helping to organise that, and I'll be hopefully doing lots of stuff to promote it, because I'm really excited to just hopefully having her on a podcast and doing that kind of thing, because the more book festivals and the more publishers and the more books and the more opportunities to get new writers out there, the better.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a good place to finish. Thank you, Vikki. It's been great to talk to you as ever.
You too.
And we'll be back soon with, I think, the best Scottish films, but you'll find out when we are. Cheers.